and Wigan played in Perpignan, who travelled from Portugal and Spain respectively, I think.
Yeah, because I mean that kind of makes sense, but yeah, it's yet another tale of war this year, isn't it? Frankly.
Yeah. Hopefully the club will do something for Lewis to reward him for this, and maybe help him make sure he gets to a game in Catalans next year or something. Hopefully that can happen. Credit to Love Rugby League, Total RL, and BBC Rugby League again for most of that reporting that we've just relayed to you all with our opinions put around it. If you want to make sure your opinions are covered on any news as the weeks go on and we talk about it, then go on the Google form for news views, drop in a view on any news story that takes your fancy, and we will make sure it is talked about on next week's show. But that is the news from the last week in Rugby League. We're now going to move on to a double hit of Super League match reviews. I say a double hit. Last year we'd do 6 games every week, so we're only doing 7. Anyway, there you go. Righty, it was round 17 and 18 of the Super League over the last few days, and we've got 7 games to talk about, starting with a game from last Thursday night, which was Castleford versus Hull Kingston Rovers. It finished 38 points to 24 in favour of Cass. It was 26-18 at half time in favour of Cass, so they just solidified that advantage really. Gareth Hewer was the referee. It was his first match refereeing in Super League since the 6th of March. So yeah, it's been a while between drinks, hasn't it, for the fella?
Yeah, and it wasn't even in Catalan either.
No, he didn't know what was going on, did he? Poor fella, didn't know where he was. In terms of the stats, tackling skills were not on top, as both sides were under 90% tackle success rates as a team. But Cass had a slightly better success rate and were way better in some of the other stats. Over 1,600 total metres, 343 more than Rovers, at 1.4 metres per carry better average gain than Rovers. Cass made 5 more breaks and 7 fewer errors. They were the better side. Individually, Greg Eden, 3 tries, 7 tackle busts, 227 metres, 5 clean breaks. Daryl Alford, 6 tackle busts, 151 metres. Junior Moores, 5 tackle busts, 151 metres. And Daniel Smith, 145 metres and 3 successful offloads. For Rovers, Ben Crooks with 9 tackle busts, 170 metres and 5 successful offloads. And Elliot Mincello with a try assist, 55 tackles, 10 marker tackles, 4 successful offloads, and to be honest, he didn't really get a try, did he? It shouldn't have been given. I thought he knocked on. But anyway, more of that this week to come.
Plenty of that. So a couple of people in touch on this one. Firstly, Lee Whitnell said, Rovers playing the game with exuberance of a team that knows their shit, but where they're going to enjoy themselves anyway. Cass found some gaping holes to exploit and were able to bomb 3 or 4 clear-cut chances without ever worrying they wouldn't get another opportunity 2 minutes later.
And Tom Andrews said, another dismal performance, masks with a mini comeback, constantly leaving ourselves too much to do. Rawthorne with the worst wing performance in red and white shirts since Dixon at Wembley, although not that bad. I mean, yeah, Rawthorne was pretty bad. He was pretty much a passenger in most of the game as well, I felt like. So it's reasonable for Tom to pull that one out. Both teams had a bit of a difficult journey, and the game got delayed, and it was a 6:30 kickoff rather than a 5:30 kickoff, which contributed to me probably being 3 beers in by half time rather than 1 beer in by half time. No,
that's your excuse anyway.
No Man of Steel points now, we don't get to see those, but Liga Express Albert Goldthorpe gave 3 to Greg Eden, 2 to Adam Milner and 1 to Jordan Abdul. I don't know where they got the 1 from. But
simply
he did have a couple of nice assists in the game, to be fair, and Hull KR do look better when Abdul plays, but Cass were way better in this game, weren't they?
Yeah, this is where I should confess that obviously I was away last week, so I've only seen the 3-minute highlights of these. So all I can really say about this game is that ultimately, if it seemed to me that, as Tom said, kind of KR got off to a dismal start and they were already well behind on the score sheet before they actually started to look like they played a bit. They just can't. They're not good enough to do that, are they? Frankly, as a team.
No, they're definitely not. And Cass had a little bit of a better side with Danny Richardson back in. The forward pack looked a bit more experienced. Jesse Senelefeo coming back, Nathan Massey. But they did offer a couple more debuts. Or Bailey Hodgson at fullback looked okay, and Brad Martin off the bench looked decent too for Cass. But this was a mixing in a bit of inexperience around the more senior players, which worked quite well. I thought Jax O'Neill got the start at hooker with McShane going into the halves, and I like the look of Jax O'Neill when he gets a shot in his proper position. Before, unfortunately, he was hurt, but then I think Milner stepped in and went well to it. He was already playing quite well at loose forward, scored a nice try, but then played well from hooker as well, so that was good to see. Maybe it might be a bit of a mental check for Cass that they don't have to burn out Paul McShane at hooker, which happens sometimes, I think, for this side. Highlight moments, you'll have seen these. The wraparound plays in the build-up to Eden's second try was really nice work from Cass. And Hull just didn't learn from it because McShane and Moores put on exactly the same play, but from 10 metres further out in the second half for Eden's hat-trick try too. So, yeah, good performance, I think, from Cass overall. There was that last 15 minutes of the first half where I think a couple of injuries and stuff kind of Hull KR worked their way back into it in that period, but ultimately miles the better side, I thought, Cass in this one.
Yeah, I think that for me, this is more of a general comment, but these games feel quite loose. Kind of, they don't seem to. There's plenty of chances, it seems like, both ways in these kind of contests at the moment. Particularly these two, neither of them particularly thinking about the end of the season as anything more than a chance to get it over with. So,
yeah. The tackle success rate, I think.
That tells you something, doesn't it?
Yeah. Okay, well done to Cass. One thing I would say about Cass is I think they probably needed that hammering by Hull FC the week before to almost get over themselves, like to stop thinking every defeat was just because they were being treated badly in some way. And you know, their build up to this one was hampered in the same vein as Hull KR's were. They were both coming from the same place to the same place, sort of thing, almost. So I do think they needed that, almost an excuse-free defeat where they could start having some retrospection of themselves, and I think that helps them come out and perform well in this game, and they perform well in the next game that we'll talk about, that they played later on. We'll talk about that one, but they definitely perform well in this game, so well done.
Yep. Should we move on to the other game on Thursday? So it was Huddersfield against Wakefield, and the losing snap was broken. It finished Wakefield 18, Huddersfield 14. It was actually 10-6 to Huddersfield at the break. Tim's brother Marcus was refereeing this one.
I liked his style in this one, Marcus Griffiths. I think he was quite, firm with the players, but and quite consistent. I thought he had a good game in this one. Anyway.
Yeah, firm, but not too punchy. Wakey earned the win with a 97% tackle success rate, which was 4.5% better than Huddersfield. They also had 190 more metres and made 5 fewer errors. So perhaps the scoreline was a bit flattering to Huddersfield, maybe. For Trin, Tom Johnston with 2 tries, 5 tackle busts, 155 metres and 2 clean breaks. Kalepi Tanginoa with 154 metres. Reece Lynn, 146 metres. And Matty Ashurst with a try. And I'm going to say that's 43 tackles. I think it was 43 tackles. For Huddersfield, Brandon
it would have
Moore,
been 143 metres.
Yeah, okay, we'll go with that.
Yeah.
For Trin, Brandon Moore with 61 tackles and 12 marker tackles. Mike Lawrence with 56 tackles, his normal workload.
Absolutely.
13 of which from marker, and he also made 122 metres. Jake Wardle, I think everyone's favourite new centre, 1 try assist and 125 metres. Lee Gaskell with a try assist and 121 metres. We'll just talk briefly about Albert Goldthorpe. Miller got 3 points, Jowett with 2, and Moore with 1, which you can kind of see from his defensive effort, if nothing else.
Yeah, I think it was a nod to a player stepping into only his second Super League game, and in 2 Super League games he's made over 100 tackles.
It's not a bad start, is it?
No, not certainly for the effort and wanting to impress his in his brief stint in the Super League. It's going the right way about it without the ball, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, the talking point really for this game was around the game rather than the game itself, with the news reports about the problems that the Wakey squad apparently has with Chris Chester, and the Daily Star report that came out with the unnamed source, but anyone expecting the journalist to name his source kind of doesn't understand how these things work. But it did make Chris Chester cut a really emotional figure in the pre-match interview. He couldn't look Jenna Brooks in the eyes, and not in a Brian McDermott for some reason won't look at his interviewer in the eyes kind of way, but you could see he was glazing. He didn't want to have that direct contact to the questions he was being asked, because he was clearly emotional about it, and it had really got to him. And he made that clear in what he'd been saying and stuff. What had been reported, that basically the team didn't like his training methods. He didn't really. It just seemed like he was a bad coach who was a nasty coach. And that's not the impression I ever got from Chris Chester.
No. It's when these kind of things come out, it's always difficult to understand. I mean, the team's been has been in a massive hole, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And when you're often,
well, they hadn't won since Gareth Fuhrer had last been involved in a Super League. In fact, Gareth Fuhrer refereed a Super League game more recently than they'd won, I think.
Yeah, I think, well, obviously that tells you everything, really. And unfortunately, when you're in those kind of situations, very often, in a dysfunctional team, you'll start to look at each other. You're looking for things to blame. And it did feel slightly like that was what was coming out of it, really. Not just the fact that they'd been decimated by injuries, a team that was thin anyway, all the kind of problems of coming through COVID positive tests and blah, 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 the kind of things
just
that they've been going through.
It runs on such a tight margin as well, financially.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They've been unlucky in a couple of matches, and it felt like everything that come to a head with those kind of comments, and obviously the way that it kind of affected Chester, and you have to have a heart of stone not to kind of feel that for the man, really. But
it made me pay more attention than I normally would to observing just all the interactions between the players, between him and the players, coming in and out of the dressing room before the build-up, after the game, all that sort of stuff, looking to see, is there anything here suggestive of anything? But what I did see is a few of their bigger players, more prominent players, so people like Jacob Miller, who's the captain of that side. I think he was the captain in that game anyway. I know, and Tom Johnston, who's clearly their star man, you would say. Kalepi Tanganoa, who's definitely been Wakefield's best player this year as well. And those players, I didn't sense that there was that disconnect between the coach and players like that from the playing group, just from the things you observed and stuff throughout the night on the pitch and around the pitch. So it sort of made me feel like maybe the comments were taken from outside the group rather than within the group. But the performance, the grit, the fact that they turned it around from half time. So he's going to have to go in at half time and tell his players what they need to fix up. And if he's lost the players, they ain't going to listen to that. But they must have listened to